Hey guys, tonight we slip behind the golden lattice screens and into a world few survived with dignity and tact. The candles are low, the air thick with jasmine, and behind every smile is a dagger sharpened with perfume and poetry. You're not royalty, you're not a wife, you're property barely above a necklace. Though arguably easier to replace, you've been plucked like a lily from your home, bathed in milk, shaved, in places you didn't even know grew hair, and shipped off in a lacquered palanquin bound for the inner palace. Life as a concubine isn't some incense-soaked fantasy. It's power games in silk. It's elegance under threat of execution. And yes, there's a fair chance you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and the local time. I love seeing where in the world you're dozing off from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't get to pack. You don't get to say goodbye. A knock at the door, and suddenly your mother's whispering a prayer you've never heard before. A man in formal robes counts silver coins in front of your father. The carriage outside doesn't wait. It smells like lacquer and cloves, and the interior cushions are red velvet, luxurious, but not soft enough to absorb the dread building in your stomach. The trip is long. You lose track of time. The windows are veiled, and every stop brings new handlers. New instructions. No speaking. No eye contact. Sit straight. Keep your hands folded, like you're waiting for divine judgment. The gates to the palace compound are enormous. But it's the silence that really unsettles you. No market noise. No children laughing. Just servants moving like shadows across stone courtyards and gardens, so perfect it feels like someone arranged every petal individually. You're taken to the reception hall of plum blossoms, which sounds lovely until you realize it's just a glorified human inventory station. Girls from all over the empire are lined up, numbered, stripped, and examined. You catch glimpses of silver jewelry being taken, birthmarks being recorded, and a girl crying softly behind a screen. Your turn comes quickly. A woman in a pearl-studded headdress eyes you like you're a fish at market. She gestures, and two younger attendants begin the process. They measure your height, inspect your teeth, assess your complexion with the seriousness of a military inspection. One takes note of your earlobes, apparently an omen of fertility. Another frowns at the calluses on your hands. Work hands. She mutters, not ideal. You want to disappear? You want to scream. But you do neither. You smile, because that's the first lesson. A good concubine smiles like she's made of moonlight, even when she's already cracking. They assign you a number, not a name. Your old name won't matter here. The bathing ritual is next. You're led to a steaming chamber where half a dozen other girls sit shivering in copper tubs. The water smells of rose petals and something bitter underneath ginseng. Maybe. A servant scrubs you with something that feels like sandpaper wrapped in silk. You try not to flinch as she scrapes the shame off your skin. Hair is trimmed. Not all. Just enough to suggest youth, but not naivety. Your nails are dyed red. Your teeth are brushed with salt and pomegranate bark. They hand you your new clothes. Not much. A robe so thin it might as well be ceremonial mist. The sash is yellow, not gold, but close enough to make you feel vaguely important. You'll learn later it means unranked, but promising. You're placed in the Jade Orchid wing with 7 other girls of similar status. Your room is small, but clean. There are no locks, no privacy. The windows open only wide enough to let the breeze in. Never you out. Training begins at dawn. The first lesson is posture. You're expected to sit for hours without slouching, without fidgeting, without so much as an eye twitch that could suggest boredom. The second lesson is walking slow, deliberate, gliding steps that make your ankles ache. By day 3, your knees are bruised from kneeling, and your shoulders are sore from holding trays of tea for invisible guests. You're not taught to fight. You're taught to host, to smile, to bow without looking subservient, to say no with your eyes while your lips still form yes. Your Excellency. The headmistress is a former concubine herself. You know this because she wears the black lacquer comb of those who retired without scandal. Her voice is calm, but lethal. You are not here to be loved, she says, on day 5. You are here to be needed. And no one needs a woman who complains, who speaks out of turn, or who ages poorly. Every morning begins with chants, not religious ones, court etiquette. Who to greet, how low to bow, depending on rank, how many paces behind the queen to walk. Historians still argue whether concubines held any real influence in palace politics, or if their proximity to power was just ornamental. But you can already feel the game under the surface. A girl prays too many times is suddenly assigned kitchen duty. Another who stumbles in dance is given a silk scarf and told to practice for good fortune, which everyone knows means you're on the next boat home if you don't improve. The food is bland, designed to keep you clear-skinned and slim. No garlic, no spices, definitely no alcohol. But on festival days, they let you chew a candied plum. You savor it like it's treasure stolen from the gods. At night, you lie on a mat barely wider than your body. Under a quilt, embroidered with flowers you'll never see bloom. You stare at the ceiling beams and count them, just to stay sane. One night you hear crying. Another night you hear laughing. Once, you think you hear someone being dragged down the hallway, but no one confirms it. And asking questions is the fastest way to get reassigned to laundry duty with bleeding hands and no hope of a summons. Still, you survive the first week. And then another. You start to dream less of home and more of placement. Of being chosen. Of rising above this floor. Of earning a name again. Your name. Morning arrives with the sound of clapping hands and the rustle of silk. No rooster crows in the inner palace. Time is kept by women with tight buns and tighter schedules. You rise before the second bell, roll your mat, and stand with your hands folded in front of your waist like you've been taught. Today is bathhouse test day, a trial you didn't even know you were preparing for. You're not told anything directly. Information here travels in coded glances and passing whispers. The older girls know. They've been through it. Some failed. You're ushered to the warmest wing of the compound, where condensation clings to the tiled walls like sweat. The air smells like chrysanthemums, steam, and nervous anticipation. You pass 3 pools, one milky with goat's milk, one green with crushed herbs, and one glittering with actual flakes of mica suspended in perfumed water. Everything here is designed to cleanse, soften, and dazzle. You're not here to get clean. You're here to be transformed. A woman with rings on every finger inspects you as you disrobe. You feel her eyes more than her gaze clinical. Cold, but with an edge of quiet calculation. She says nothing, only gestures toward the milk bath. You sink in, careful not to grimace at the sudden warmth. A younger attendant begins massaging something sticky into your scalp. It smells like rice, wine, and mint. Another begins exfoliating your back with a cloth made of what feels like the devil's loofah. You're not allowed to speak. After the bath, you're dried with towels thick as carpets and dusted with crushed pearl. Powder clings to your skin like moonlight. Your hair is coiled into a bun, so tight it forces your head back slightly. A posture trick. When you look at yourself in the polished bronze mirror, you don't quite recognize the girl blinking back. She looks elegant, untouchable, fragile na deliberate. Dangerous way. A vase that dares you to drop it. Then comes the scenting. You're led to a chamber lined with ceramic jars, each holding powders and pastes with names like desert orchid and snow fox breath. A woman dips a brush into one and strokes your collarbone with it. It smells of citrus and sandalwood. Another outlines your wrists with something floral. Spicy. Implacably. Each scent tells a story. Each scent says something about who you are or who they want you to pretend to be. The final test is the scent screen. You are presented to a senior concubine, one who served the emperor directly. She wears 3 combs in her hair, each encrusted with gems the size of your fingernails. She reclines behind a bamboo screen, her eyes just visible through its slats. You are instructed to walk past slowly. Once, then again. She doesn't look at you. She breathes deeply. She smells of nervous jasmine. She says eventually. A few women laugh behind their sleeves. You want to melt through the tile. But then she adds, "Good." A man will want to lean closer to be sure. And that's that. Apparently. You've passed. That evening, you're granted a slightly larger bowl of rice. Not a reward exactly, just a nod from the palace that you've survived one more test without being discarded like wilted lotus petals. You eat slowly, trying to stretch the taste of mild success. Your fellow trainees glance at you differently now. A few with envy, a few with approval, and one with quiet relief, because if you passed, maybe she will too. You learn something strange as you're massaged with sesame oil before bed. Survival in this place isn't about beauty. It's about precision. Every move, every breath, every blink needs to mean something. A concubine is a painting, but alive, and judged in real time. One wrong brushstroke, and you're not art anymore. You're just smudged canvas. Some of the other girls weren't so lucky. Yao Ling, the girl with the soft voice and the perfect hairline, was given a scent that didn't suit her complexion. The screen woman sneezed. Yao Lin now scrubs floors in the servant wing. Another girl was said to smell too sweet, like dessert wine, which apparently implied desperation. She cried that night and was gone by dawn. You take to sleeping with a sachet of dried osmanthus beneath your blanket. It helps mask the night sweat, and also keeps you from forgetting who you are under all this powder and polish. You think of your mother, who once said that jasmine was for weddings, leona for mourning, and osmanthus for survival. Historians still argue whether these rituals were about elegance or control, whether palace life was a place of power or imprisonment. But from where you sit barefoot on cool tile, your fingers scented with crushed camellia, it's obviously both. You are valuable now, decorated, labeled, displayed. And, in danger, you wake the next morning to find a new robe laid at the edge of your bedroll. Pale blue, a sign of advancement. Blue is considered serene, trustworthy, perhaps even wise, if worn properly. But blue is also the color worn by those placed in line for inspection by senior court ministers. If you impress them, you may be chosen to live in the inner quarters of the emperor's private garden, or you may be sent to the kitchens, or the retirement courtyard, and no one ever comes back from there. You fold your robe carefully, avoiding the embroidery, a silver crane on the hem, an omen of longevity, or perhaps the palace's cruel idea of humor. You dress, stretch your fingers, and prepare to face whatever inspection awaits. There's a saying among concubines, whispered only when the curtains are closed tight: the prettiest girls bleed first. You still don't know if that means punishment or favor, but either way, you're about to find out. The first time you notice the rankings, you don't even realize what they are. They're not shouted or posted. They're embroidered subtle, deliberate, almost charming if they weren't quietly terrifying. Tiny motifs on the hems of robes, a silver plum blossom, a golden flame, a coiled dragon. You'd thought they were just elegant touches. But now you realize they're more like caste tattoos. You, unfortunately, have the plum. Pretty, modest, entirely forgettable. You're in the tier of those being watched, but not too closely. The expendables. At breakfast, the dragon-marked girl doesn't serve herself. A girl with a crane hem does it for her. Not because they're friends, but because that's the order of things. When you accidentally step through a door ahead of someone, with a phoenix stitched onto her sleeve, she doesn't glare. She doesn't need to. 2 hours later, you're reassigned to pond cleaning for posture correction. You now know what rank smells like lotus soup, sandalwood, and the faint sting of camphor. In the hierarchy of the harem, you're a seedling. Your job is to grow without taking up space, bloom without scent, and hope the sun notices. The wife class is above you, a realm you'll never reach unless the emperor decides to break tradition. Above even that is the empress. Of course, though her presence is mostly felt, not seen. Like thunder above a palace that already rains commands, your lessons now include etiquette drills with rank-specific variations. You bow deeper to a crane than to a plum. You avert your gaze slightly longer for a flame. You don't speak unless directly addressed by anyone higher. You learn to say thank you with a subtle dip of the wrist. You practice how to receive compliments without looking pleased, because pleasure is a privilege you haven't earned. At mealtime, the seating arrangement is another quiet battlefield. You're placed at the far end of the tea room, beside the back wall, where servants come and go. The scent of sesame buns drifts past you, tantalizingly close. But those are for the favored. You receive congee, precisely ladled into a bowl that's too elegant for its contents. You eat silently. Even chewing must be graceful now. Historians still argue whether this harem hierarchy functioned as a meritocracy or simply a beauty pageant gilded in ritual. Some say the most graceful rose through rank. Others insist it was all about timing, connections, and divine luck. You suspect both are right and both are wrong. Nothing here is fair, but it's always precise. One afternoon, while folding linens in your training hall, you're summoned. No one looks surprised. One of the eunuchs in teal silk taps your shoulder, and you rise. Heart thudding, her ladyship requests your assistance. He murmurs, That could mean anything. You nod. You follow. You don't ask. You're led into a chamber where the air is thick with rose oil. A high-ranking concubine lounges on a chaise, fingers stained with ink from her calligraphy scroll. She doesn't look up. Play the guzheng, she says. You sit and begin. Fingers gliding over strings that suddenly feel foreign under pressure. She listens with half an ear while sipping from a ceramic cup decorated with cloud motifs. Then she says, louder, but not hungry. You adjust. Good. Not disparity. That's rare. After a pause, she waves her hand. Enough. You begin to rise. Wait, she says. You're plum-ranked. Yes. You nod. You play like a crane. She murmurs. Keep it that way. She doesn't smile. She doesn't need to. The message is clear. Someone's watching. And maybe, just maybe, they like what they see. Later that week, you're assigned to serve tea in the outer corridor of the Emperor's reading room. Not the inner chamber. He's not even there, but the periphery of his space. Still, it's a promotion. You're dressed in a pale robe, embroidered with peonies modest, but cleaner than your old one. Your sash is tied tighter. Your hair in a double twist. When the ministers pass, you bow with perfect timing. One of them stops to ask for jasmine tea instead of oolong. You nod. Pour, and lower your gaze. He pauses. Steady hands. He mutters, almost to himself. You don't reply. He leaves. Back in your quarters. Your mattress has been upgraded to a slightly thicker one. The mosquito net has no holes. Your robe the next morning is a slightly richer shade. These are the signs. Tiny. Deliberate. Crucial. The palace doesn't tell you you're rising. It shows you, not everyone rises with grace. One girl with a crane hem is demoted after being seen laughing too loudly in the orchid courtyard. Another is rumored to have spoken ill of a flame-ranked favorite and is now permanently assigned to temple duty, an exile with incense and dust as her only company. You learn quickly that jealousy is perfume here. It clings, and sometimes it chokes. You hear whispers of a legendary concubine from 2 generations ago, Lady May, who rose from plum rank to become first consort simply by mastering the tea ceremony to such perfection that the emperor claimed sipping from her hands healed his headaches. Some say she used herbs. Others insist it was witchcraft. And there are those who say she simply knew exactly when to be silent. Her name is still inscribed on a lacquered plaque outside the Hall of Eternal Grace. You walk past it every 3rd day, never daring to look too long. One night, while brushing your hair beside the moonlit pond, a younger girl asks you, "What do you think it feels like to be a flame?" You pause. You want to say it feels like power, but instead you say, "Heavy, like holding fire in silk sleeves." She nods. Neither of you speaks again. It's a quiet understanding. Rise too fast, and you burn. Still, you find yourself craving it. A change in stitching. A brighter robe. A seat closer to the lacquer doors. Recognition. You no longer dream of leaving. You dream of mattering. The palace has reshaped you. You don't know if that's survival or surrender, but you sleep easier on your thicker mattress. And when? One morning, your new robe has the faint outline of a crane at its hem. You don't flinch. You fold it carefully. You wear it. You glide. You're summoned with no explanation. The messenger bows low. but offers no scroll. No name. Just 4 words the Emperor has chosen. You do not cry. You do not speak. You simply follow. The corridor stretches endlessly, lit by lanterns, the color of peaches at dusk. You pass potted plum trees, statues of mythical lions, 2 peacocks asleep on a carved railing. A soft breeze carries the scent of sandalwood and something else burnt orange peel. You wonder if it's meant to soothe you or simply mask fear. Inside, the chamber is warm and dim. There are no windows, only silk screens painted with mountains, rivers, and cranes in flight. It smells faintly of camphor and honey. You kneel on the embroidered cushion without instruction. Your heart is hammering behind your ribs, but your face remains composed, slightly downcast. You've trained for this, haven't you? A servant bathes your hands in warm rosewater, drying them with linen that feels like cloud. Someone brushes powder across your cheeks, then withdraws without a word. You're alone for a moment, maybe 2. The silence is thicker than the curtains. Then he enters. You don't raise your eyes. He does not speak, at least not to you. His movements are light, casual. He might be younger than you imagined, or older. It hardly matters. You are not here to see. You are here to be seen. When he stops in front of you, you bow lower. The embroidered phoenix on your sleeve grazes the floor. His hand reaches under your chin, not roughly, not kindly, and tilts your face up. You meet his gaze, just once, then drop it again. He says nothing. Neither do you. Later, you're escorted back. Your feet sore from kneeling. You're neither praised nor punished. That night, no one speaks to you. Even the eunuch who brings your food avoids your eyes. One girl in the corner nods slightly as you pass. That's it. That's all the acknowledgement you receive. You've survived, what some call an honor, and others whisper about like a ghost story. There's an old tale among the concubines about the first night curse. They say if the emperor forgets your name by sunrise, you'll never rise in rank again. You'll be passed over, ignored, buried in silks, without ever being touched again. You'll live in the palace, but only in shadow. Historians still argue whether such a curse truly existed, or whether it was a coping myth invented by the forgotten women themselves. The next morning, your breakfast include lotus seed, paste buns. That's new. You receive a robe in a slightly deeper hue. Not a crane. Not yet. But something has shifted. You're moved to a quieter room, shared with only 3 other women, 2 of whom have already been summoned before. They say nothing to you. You say nothing back. Everyone knows silence is safer. The days that follow are strangely calm. You're no longer part of the daily drills. Instead, you're taught new lessons, ones that presume experience. You learn the art of selecting scrolls the emperor might enjoy. You memorize his favorite scents. You're instructed on how to interpret his silences, his frowns, his slight changes in posture. It's not romance. It's reconnaissance. One afternoon, you're brought into a chamber where a circle of women lounge around a fountain shaped like a carp. Their hairpins gleam like moonlight on daggers. These are the favored ones. One looks up and smirks. The new blossom, she says, sipping tea. Another chuckles. Let's hope she's not just another petal in the wind. They laugh. Not cruelly, just efficiently. This is their world. They're fluent in its cruelty. A fringe tale floats through the gardens. A concubine once gifted the emperor a nightingale that sang only at sunset. She rose 3 ranks in one season. Then, when the bird died, she fell into obscurity. Some say she drowned herself in the lotus pond. Others insist she lives still, behind a screen of mourning silk, speaking only to ghosts. You wonder if her story is meant as warning or dare. When you're summoned again, the process is more familiar, though no less surreal. The chamber is the same, but the mood has shifted. There's no testing now. No audition. This time, you are simply chosen. Again, you realize the emperor does not always speak. Sometimes he reads. Sometimes he falls asleep beside you without a word. Once, he asked what your favorite flower was. You said camellia. He said, "Tu delicate. I prefer peonies." You made a mental note. Weeks pass, like water shimmering. Cool. And strangely formless. You lose track of days. Your cycle is regulated by whispers, by visits, by whether your robe is sent back with fresh embroidery or left unchanged. One day, a maid offers to carry your tray for you. That's how you know. You've entered the second tier. Still, you feel the weight. The eyes. One woman who had held her position for 5 years suddenly vanishes, her chamber emptied overnight. The whispers say she broke a rule. Others say she was poisoned. No one confirms. No one asks. You take smaller bites during meals now, and watch your tea for signs of bitterness. You begin to understand that power here is not loud. It's soft. It wears perfume. It walks in small steps, but it can crush you just the same. During a night walk through the sandalwood courtyard, you hear 2 older concubines discussing another's fall from favor. She smiled too wide. One says, he thought she was mocking him. The other replies, better to smile with your eyes. Leave the lips still. You practice that in the mirror later. It's harder than it sounds. A new fringe ritual begins to circulate, rubbing sesame oil into your wrists before seeing the emperor. It supposedly calms the pulse, makes you appear more serene. You try it. He doesn't notice. Or maybe he does, and doesn't say anything. That's worse. Somehow, one evening, a gift appears at your bedside. A hairpin, shaped like a phoenix feather. Jade, finely carved. There's no note. You know better than to ask who it's from. You wear it the next morning. No one comments. But when the emperor passes you in the courtyard, his gaze lingers for just 1 second longer than usual. That's all you need. That night, you sleep with the hairpin under your pillow. You no longer train with the others. Your mornings are Keter now, full of unspoken instructions and eyes that weigh your every move. The bathwater is warmer, the silk robes finer, but the stakes have multiplied. You can sense the difference. You are no longer unknown. You are noticed. And that is far more dangerous than being invisible. In the peach courtyard, you now walk among the watched concubines, those who have been summoned more than once, those whose names may have crossed the emperor's tongue, even if only briefly. You move like vapor between silk screens, never too fast, never too eager. You are taught how to smile as if remembering a private joke, how to cry without creasing your makeup. The instructors are gone now. Your new teachers are your rivals. They do not instruct you with words. They correct you with glances. One girl shifts slightly closer to the emperor's path. And suddenly, she's served first at dinner. Another lets her perfume linger too strongly near his study and is assigned back to tea duty for a week. The rules are silent, shifting, enforced by rumor and outcome. You're told to prepare for pillow talk evenings, nights, when the emperor may summon not for pleasure but for peace. These are the most delicate nights. You're not there to arouse, but to soothe. One wrong anecdote, one misplaced laugh, and you could vanish like morning mist. There is no script, only suggestion. You study everything, the types of ink he uses for his scrolls, the pacing of his footsteps on colder days, the way his fingers tap when he's annoyed. You read 3 different versions of the same parable, just to know which ending he prefers. You learn that he hates pears, that he secretly adores hand-fed mulberries, that the sound of wind chimes makes him nostalgic, but he'll never say for what. You become a scholar of his moods. You become an expert in your own erasure. One night, he invites you to sit on the balcony outside the plum hall. The moonlight makes the marble glow pale silver. You offer to read aloud. He nods, distracted, and hands you a scroll of poetry. As you recite, you realize halfway through that the lines are from a banned courtier, a man executed for treason 2 emperors ago. You falter, just slightly. He says nothing. You finish the verse. He finally speaks. You knew. It isn't a question. You simply bow your head. He smiles faintly. Good. You are learning. The next morning, the comb you're given is bone white, carved with tiny chrysanthemums. That afternoon, you overhear a concubine whispering about the poison brush. It's a tactic. Some girls leave behind trace powders on letters, scrolls, even in makeup. There are no outright murders. No one bleeds. But fevers appear, rashes bloom, and the victim simply begins to fade. Historians still argue whether the palace truly tolerated poison, or whether these stories emerged from the paranoia of isolated women locked in daily silent warfare. Either way, the fear is real. You begin mixing your own tea. You decline unfamiliar fruit. You keep your face neutral. Always. You remember one fringe tale from a passing servant? A concubine once wore a perfume so intoxicating that the emperor declared her his muse. But the scent it was blended with crushed beetles and opium. Her favor soared until it didn't. She was last seen weeping in the temple of regret. Exiled to prayer. You decide to stick to jasmine water and chamomile. A new threat arrives in the form of a girl named Mei Xuan. She's newly arrived, barely 17, and already flame-ranked. Her skin is like milk tea, her laugh a bell on a breezy day. She's charming, artless, or so it seems. Within 2 weeks, she's hosted twice. You feel her presence like a shadow beside your own. One evening, you're both summoned. Yes, both. This hasn't happened before. A shared visit, a shared audience. You ride side by side in the lacquered carriage, neither speaking. She adjusts her sleeve 3 times. You watch the moonlight reflect off her hairpin. It's obsidian, new, in the chamber. You're seated across from each other while the emperor dines. He says little. You serve him a slice of candied melon. She pours his wine. The silence stretches. Then, unexpectedly, he asks, "Which of you plays the chin?" You both answer. He nods. "Then you will both play." You freeze, not because you can't, but because you've never been pitted against someone like this. A performance duel. She goes first. Her fingers float across the strings, light as silk threads. The melody is soft, romantic, very safe. Your turn. You strike a deeper note. Let it hum. Then you begin something older, an imperial lament about distant warriors and quiet widows. Your tone is mournful, restrained, but charged. You risk emotion. It's a gamble. When you finish, the emperor says nothing. He leaves the room. That's worse than judgment. Mei Xuan smile for this. She leaves first. You linger, heart pounding. The next day, she is reassigned to garden rotation. Not demoted, but moved. Your meals now include pine nut dumplings, his rumored favorite. You win. For now, but the garden is filled with sharp-eyed girls who've also won for now. Later that week, a senior concubine whispers, "Don't relax." He tires of brilliance quickly. You nod, already aware. You are not here to shine. You are here to flicker, to glow faintly, to remind him you exist without making him feel watched. In the late evenings, you begin keeping a secret scroll hidden inside a sandalwood box. You don't write feelings. You write observations, habits, names, who walks where, who eats what. Not because you plan to use it, but because someday you might have to. Even your dreams have changed. You no longer dream of freedom. You dream of staying just interesting enough, just soothing enough. Never so familiar, he grows bored. Never so distant, he forgets. And one morning, as you light your own incense and brush oil behind your ears, you realize with clarity, survival here is not about seduction. It's about presence. Not too loud, not too soft. Just enough to linger in memory, like perfume on silk. You wake before the sun, heart already alert. You've learned that survival is not won in the bedchamber or at poetry readings. It's carved slowly into your bones by dawn rituals and dusk silences. Today, the headmaid leaves a folded note beneath your tray. One word. Prepare. It doesn't say for what. It never does. You bathe in rosewater and ginger. Your robe today is darker than usual, deep jade with gold threading along the hem. It whispers status, just shy of arrogance. The fabric glides as you walk. As you step into the court physician's chamber, your stomach knots. You're not ill, but you might be pregnant. And here, that is both the most dangerous and the most powerful diagnosis a woman can receive. The physician says nothing. She's an older woman, stone-faced and swift. She examines your pulse with 3 fingers at your wrist, then gives a small, unreadable nod. You will rest now, she says quietly, as if the walls themselves could report her tone. You're escorted to the room of quiet blossoms, a small wing lined with silks and shadows, where potentially pregnant concubines are monitored like porcelain. You are told to lie down. Do not eat cold things. Do not become emotional. Do not climb stairs. Do not laugh too hard. It's not superstition. It's survival protocol. A servant girl brings you a special bowl of sweet lotus porridge. You pretend to enjoy it. Though your appetite has turned traitor, you are now a vessel, a maybe, a walking negotiation between life and influence. If the child lives, and if it is male, and if it survives past infancy, you might rise. You might even be considered for promotion. Or you might simply be seen as a threat. Historians still argue how many concubines actually carried imperial children versus how many were suspected and quietly erased before they ever delivered. Some scrolls say only 3 out of every 10 pregnancies were acknowledged. Others say the number was higher. But the children themselves were farmed out to noble foster families and never seen again. Your body no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the whispers. You feel phantom hands touch your stomach as you walk. Not real ones, just the imagined gazes of rival concubines calculating the odds. You remember an old tale the garden girls whispered about Lady Shun, who bore twin sons. For one glorious season, she was draped in gold. Then, suddenly, one boy fell ill. The other disappeared. Lady Shun lost her mind and spent her days feeding shadow children from empty bowls. She was retired to a nunnery. But some say she never made it past the gates. When you return to your quarters after 10 days in isolation, your robe has changed color again. Pale blue, with a stitched emblem of a crane now visible on the left cuff. Your face remains impassive. But inside, your breath catches. You've been ranked up. Your pulse accelerates not from joy, but from fear. You've tasted proximity to power, and now you know how sharp it is. A few days later, the Emperor calls for you again. He says nothing about the pregnancy. He doesn't ask. He doesn't touch your stomach. Instead, he speaks of a dream he had about a river with no fish. You nod. A barren river is still a river. You say, "It's the right answer." Or, "Close enough." He pours you tea with his own hand. No one says a word. When you return to your chambers, a small chest has been placed on your table. Inside is a lacquered box of dried ginseng root, wrapped in silk. That night, you sleep with one hand on your stomach, whispering to it, not out of love, out of strategy. The physician returns weekly. So far, the signs are promising, but no official decree has come. You're still just a possibility. Meanwhile, other concubines circle closer. Some bring gifts, tea, hand-embroidered slippers. You accept them with a bow and file away their names in your private ledger. Mei Xuan sends a hair ribbon, embroidered with tiny and distinct flowers. Too neat, too perfect. You don't wear it. One evening, a senior concubine named Lady Ji invites you to a private poetry reading. Her rooms are perfumed with cinnamon and civet. The wine is mulberry dark and strong. You sip slowly. She leans in close, her voice like velvet over thorns. "You must be careful," she says. "The Emperor's favor is like summer rain, sweet and brief, but sometimes it floods." You nod politely, but you know what she's doing. Planting doubt, testing your stability. You smile and quote back a line of poetry. "The reed that bows in the storm outlives the cedar." She blinks, then laughs. You are now officially her problem. Later that week, you dream of giving birth not to a child, but to a scroll. In the dream, the midwife unwraps silk blankets and reveals lines of imperial poetry written in blood. You wake shaken. Your hands tremble as you braid your hair. As the months unfold, the palace watches you, not overtly, but things shift. You're seated closer to the high pavilion during performances. You're offered the Emperor's preferred sweetmeats before they reach anyone else. But also, your tea is now poured only from your own pot. Your chamber doors are checked twice at night. Once, you find your robe sash moved just slightly. The palace wants you to succeed, but not too much. The palace wants heirs, but not too many. You understand now why some women feign miscarriages after reaching a certain threshold of favor. It's a way to reset the board. One morning, the physician returns again. Her face is solemn, unreadable. She examines your pulse longer than usual, then says nothing. She simply bows and leaves. That evening, you are not summoned. No one says the word. Not aloud. But your food returns to normal rations. The silk robes stop arriving. You are reassigned to your previous courtyard. Your rank remains. For now, but the child is gone. Whether it ever was real is a question you don't dare ask. And yet, something else remains. The memory of how close you came. The fact that for one brief season, you held the Empire's future in your belly, even if just imagined. The walls. Listen now. You're sure of it. Every screen feels like an ear. Every mirror like an eye. The quiet has changed. It used to be soft and forgettable. Now it presses down. Heavy. Thick with implications. You've returned to your usual rank. But nothing is quite the same. Not after that near rise. Not after the possibility of carrying imperial blood. You notice the eunuchs flinch slightly when handing you things. Not overtly, but enough. You're marked now, not with disgrace, not with glory, but with almost. The Emperor's passing glances don't linger like they used to, but they still happen, which makes you inconvenient. You sleep with your comb under the pillow, just in case, and you never speak freely, not even when alone. You've learned the true currency here isn't beauty. It isn't cleverness. It's information, and no one traffics in it better than the eunuchs, supposedly loyal to the Emperor, neutral as polished stone. But they whisper. They trade secrets for silks, silvers, or safety. You begin offering small courtesies, sandalwood balm for cracked hands, ginger candies on winter mornings. You never ask for news. But it comes. They tell you who has fallen ill, who was caught sneaking letters, who received a late-night gift from the Emperor's personal scribe. It's not gossip. It's ammunition. And you're not the only one gathering. Concubines leave fans outside their rooms, as signals painted a certain way to indicate a willingness to exchange news. You start seeing them everywhere. Plum blossoms mean, meet me in the east courtyard. Chrysanthemums mean I know something you don't. A fan painted in plain white dangerous. That means someone has nothing to lose. One afternoon, you find a fan tucked under your cushion. Red orchids. You look it up in your secret scroll betrayal confirmed. You say nothing. You burn it. That night, as you walk the moonlit path between your chamber and the library, you hear footsteps that aren't yours. They stop when you stop. They resume when you resume. You don't run. You walk slower. You make it to the door, slide it open, and step inside. When you turn, the corridor is empty, but there's a scroll slipped beneath the threshold. No name, just one line. Even shadows can bleed. You don't sleep that night. Historians still argue whether the inner palaces were genuinely that dangerous, or whether the women who survived them simply passed down exaggerated tales, tangled with rumor and performance. But your body tells you otherwise. The tension in your shoulders, the bruises on your palms from clenching fists too long. A new protocol is introduced. Every concubine must now report weekly to the record mistress, ostensibly to update personal scrolls, ensure accurate account books, and review etiquette standards. But really, It's surveillance. You're measured, weighed, and subtly interrogated with questions that seem mundane. What is your favorite flower? What music have you been practicing? Do you find the recent menu agreeable? One wrong answer could be read as discontent, too enthusiastic. And you're marked as calculating. You respond like a paper lantern in soft wind, glowing faintly, swaying slightly, never firm enough to be caught. A new girl arrives, not younger, older, maybe 30. That's rare. She wears no jewelry and speaks only when spoken to. Her name is Bouchen. She watches everything, says almost nothing. Within a week, she is summoned. Within 2, she receives a silver pheasant comb, a rare mark of favor. Within 3, another girl in her hallway mysteriously trips down a staircase. You avoid Bouchen, but she doesn't avoid you. One morning, she appears beside you during tea. You have very steady hands. She says, watching you pour. You smile. I learned from the palace gardener. He trims roses without gloves. She nods, approving. You've lasted long. That's rare. You don't reply. You don't need to. From then on, she nods at you in passing. That's it. But the others notice. Suddenly, you're being watched again. Mei Xuan starts talking to the younger concubines louder than usual when you pass. Lady Ji sighs a bit more dramatically during meals. Even the eunuchs begin standing farther away when they speak to you. You've become a satellite again, orbiting power. Not the center of it, but too close to ignore. Then come the curtain visits. Eunuchs bearing gifts a new ink set, a hair comb in the shape of a carp, a pair of embroidered slippers with dragonflies. All unsigned. All left in your quarters. You keep only one, the ink set. The rest. You return discreetly through the laundry passage. Let others be seen accepting too much. You suspect the emperor may still be curious, but not enough to call. Maybe he sends gifts to many. Or maybe it's not him at all. One night, Bouchen finds you on the balcony. Do you know why they fear you? She asks. You tilt your head. They can't read you. You're not clever. You're careful. That's worse. You give the smallest of smiles. I'll take that as a compliment. She shrugs. It wasn't one. Later that week, she's summoned again. And promoted. Her robe changes. Crimson. Dangerous. You begin walking at different times of day. You rearrange your chamber, so your shadow falls differently at sunset. You stop drinking the hibiscus tea served in the second round of meals. You do not explain why. You remember another tale, perhaps real. Perhaps not of the concubine who stitched prayers into her bedding. Not words, but patterns. Supposedly invisible to the eye, but read by heaven. She lived to old age. Or maybe she was drowned in her own sheets. Hard to say. You begin embroidering too. Not prayers. Observations. A swan with folded wings. A weeping willow. A turtle with a cracked shell. A language only you understand. One day, you see the emperor in the corridor. Just briefly. He's older than before. Tired. He glances your way. Pauses. And then keeps walking. But that pause is everything. You return to your quarters. Light a stick of cedar incense. And write one more name in your scroll. Not a rival. Not a eunuch. Just one word, shadow. You feel it everywhere now. You wear it well. You are summoned again. But this time not to the emperor. You're called to the southern pavilion rare. Strange. It's where the ministers and scribes sometimes meet, though it is forbidden for concubines to wander there without escort. Still, you're escorted. Two eunuchs, silent as salt statues. You walk between them, like a letter being carried unopened. When the doors part, you are greeted not by an emperor or rival, but by two courtwomen in pale robes, Archivist Liu and Advisor Ren. They bow, just slightly. No one smiles. A red table sits between you, stacked with scrolls. Not imperial poetry or record books. Letters. Sealed ones. You're here to help us. Liu says. It's an honor. Ren adds, in a tone so dry, it could desiccate flowers. They want you to read through these letters. Identify handwriting, tone, emotion. Who might be growing discontent? Who might be rebellious? You blink. You want me to spy. You say, it isn't a question. We want you to observe. Liu replies, you're very good at that. You're given no real choice, and so begins your new life, not demoted, not promoted, just shifted sideways into the folds of the court's most invisible machinery. You are still a concubine. You still attend calligraphy rehearsals and lotus petal recitals. But now, when another girl reads a poem aloud, you listen more for what she omits. You note who skips meals, who begins copying sacred texts more often than usual, who sighs too audibly when the emperor's name is spoken. Your reports are subtle. Wrapped in haiku and metaphors, a crane with clipped wings still dances beautifully. You write 1 week. Liu will understand. That's about Baochan. You've noticed she's stopped visiting the upper halls. She's lost interest. Or lost favor. Or lost something worse. Historians still argue whether the imperial harem had its own intelligence network, or whether this idea comes from court dramas and fictionalized records. But what you know is this: everyone listens. Everyone chooses a side. And sometimes survival means becoming part of the architecture itself, wooden, beautiful, hollow. You do not receive rewards for your new duties. No new silk robes. No gold combs. Just fewer accidents. Less attention. The sort of peace you don't trust, but still accept. Until one day, everything shatters. It begins with a bell. Not the dinner bell or the music bell, but a smaller one tuned to a sharper pitch. Emergency. You and the other concubines are herded into the sunlight hall. All of you, even the elderly ones who haven't seen the emperor in decades. You sit. You wait. The emperor is ill. That's the whisper. No one says how ill, but he hasn't spoken in 2 days. The doctors are terrified. The ministers squabble outside the chamber. Inside, the women panic quietly. If he dies, everything resets. Rankings, protections, favors, children. Some girls will rise. Others will be exiled. Some may vanish without even the decency of a note. You don't breathe for hours. Baochan sits across from you. Her eyes are glass. She clutches a silk pouch in her lap, the kind used for incense. Oh, poison. You glance away. That night, you're not sent home. You're kept in the sunlight hall. Food is brought. Water. But new news. The emperor lives or dies beyond the doors. And you are caged in the golden cage of your rank. Unable to do anything but wait. You think about your scroll, the one under your sleeping mat, full of names. Fans. Codes. Whispers. You wonder if anyone will find it, if they'll understand what it means, if they'll use it, or burn it. You dream of fire. It dances in your hair, eats your robes, leaves you standing naked but untouched. When morning comes, the bell rings again. Same pitch, but now it means something else. The Emperor has spoken. He lives, but he is not expected to rule for much longer. And so, the shuffling begins. Ministers jostle for positioning. Concubines try to guess which of their sons might rise. You have no son. You are a thread that could be snipped at any time, but threads can also be tied into nooses or escape ropes. You meet secretly with Lu again. She tells you that a new heir is being considered, the Emperor's son by Lady Hua. Young, soft-spoken, but heavily protected. Your new task: watch Lady Hua. Report shifts. Tensions. Weakness. You hesitate. Liu doesn't blink. Refuse. And you may find yourself reassigned. Or retired. Retired. A word that means anything from sent to a nunnery, to locked in a tower, to simply vanished. So you say yes. Watching Lady Hua is like watching moonlight on water. Slippery. Ethereal. She moves with the calm of someone who knows her place is secured unless someone like you sees beneath that calm. One afternoon, you slip a poem into her chamber, under the guise of an offering. It's an obscure verse about ambition disguised as humility. A test. The next day, she quotes it aloud during a music rehearsal. Loudly. Clearly. She understood. She's playing the game, too. You report it. Later. Lu gifts you a new inkstone. It smells faintly of sandalwood and regret. More curtain gifts appear. A red envelope. A gold hairpin shaped like a fish. A tray of candied ginger. You send them all back. Except the ginger. You begin walking at dusk again. Alone. It's dangerous. But it's the only time you can think. You watch the cranes roost by the koi pond. You think about how easily a robe can trip you. How a single misstep on these stone paths can be called an accident. You start carrying a note in your sleeve, just one line. If I fall, it was not by choice. You tell no one. Not even the girl who used to be your friend. Not even the mirror. Because now, even your reflection feels like a spy. Bao Qin disappears the next morning. No ceremony. No farewell. Just silence where her name used to echo. Her chamber is reassigned within the hour. Her lacquer box of calligraphy brushes now rests in someone else's hands. Her embroidered slippers still sit by the threshold for half a day, before a maid quietly takes them away. No one asks questions out loud, but eyes ask them constantly. You pretend not to notice, because noticing is dangerous, because Bao Qin was powerful, flawed, sharp, necessary, and now she is gone. And if she can vanish, anyone can. You eat breakfast slowly, peeling your lotus seeds one by one. That's what everyone sees. What they don't see is the list in your mind, names you've whispered only to the walls. Girls who once curtsied just a bit too stiffly. Eunuchs who shifted their posture ever so slightly when passing Lady Hua. Lady Hua is still present. Serene. Untouched. Her robes more muted now. Her hair pinned in a simpler knot. As if she's already prepared for mourning. As if humility will hide her ambition. The Emperor weakens by the day. You've heard the coughing. Harsh. Wet. Covered poorly by silk screens and chamber music. You wonder if he knows what storms await once his eyes close forever. Or maybe he does. Maybe he's letting them sharpen their knives before they begin to dance. Meanwhile, you are summoned again, not by Liu, not by the Emperor, but by Lady Su, one of the oldest concubines still breathing court air. She's practically a myth, rumored to have once been favored in her youth, cast aside after a miscarriage, and quietly allowed to live out her days tending bonsai in the West Garden. She has no allies, no power, just time, and somehow, she wants to see you. You expect a riddle, a warning, maybe even poison. Instead, you get tea, bitter, perfectly brewed. I've seen the way you survive, she says, not looking at you. You do it sideways, like a crab in low tide. You blink. That's not always a compliment. She smiles faintly. Survival never is. She pours more tea. They're all waiting for the Emperor to die. You're waiting for something else. You tilt your head. Like what? She shrugs. Maybe to become someone else entirely. You leave confused, but grateful. Later that evening, a gift arrives in your chamber. A tiny potted bonsai. Its label reads, Twisted Pine. Age unknown. You keep it near your sleeping mat. From then on, your movements shift again. You begin speaking more to the servants, asking after their families, their memories of past concubines. You collect tiny details, like raindrops in a bowl, individually meaningless, collectively deep. A lost ring here, a burned robe there, a midnight scream that no one admits hearing. Every scrap becomes a stitch in your private map of danger. Historians still debate whether concubines truly influenced imperial succession, or whether such notions were merely romantic inventions of later dynasties. You know better. You know that sometimes, all it takes is a glance. A dropped fan. A whispered phrase in a garden for a prince to rise or fall. You receive a note, sealed in blue wax. No ambling. Just the phrase, meet at Crane Pavilion. Midnight. Come alone. It's not signed, but you recognize the handwriting. Lady Hua, you go. Of course you do. The Crane Pavilion is half ruined. Rarely visited, except during spring ceremony. You arrive just after the moon crests. She's already there, dressed in white. A single lantern glows beside her, painting the floor in amber shadows. You reported me, she says softly. You say nothing. She laughs, bitter and flat. Don't worry. I would have reported me too. You shift your weight. Why call me? Because I'm tired, she says. Because none of us win. Not really. You think this ends with one of us wearing pearls and sipping peach wine. It ends with cold soup and someone forgetting your name. You nod. She tosses you a scroll. It's a copy of the heir's birth scroll. Look at the date. You do. Then frown. It predates the Emperor's last official visit to her chambers by 6 weeks. He's not the father, she says. You inhale sharply. She smirks. Now you understand. You want to walk away, to throw the scroll into the pond. But knowledge is heavier than anger. It anchors you. If the Emperor dies, and that boy rises, she continues, I become untouchable. Unless someone like you says something. She steps closer. I'm not threatening you. I'm offering you a place, a future. You don't answer. Not then. Not in words. You leave the pavilion, with the scroll hidden in your sleeve, and her scent trailing behind you like a ghost. Back in your chamber, you sit with the bonsai. Its leaves tremble slightly in the night breeze. You consider burning the scroll. You consider delivering it to Liu. You consider locking it away and doing nothing. Each choice is a doorway, and none of them have labels. You fall asleep without deciding. The scroll stays tucked under your pillow, whispering betrayals in your dreams. The next day, Baochen's name is mentioned again, for the first time since her disappearance. A servant girl says her favorite comb was found behind the incense cabinet, still warm to the touch. You say nothing. Later, Liu passes you in the garden. She doesn't speak, just glances once at your sleeve, then nods, almost imperceptibly. You don't know if she knows. You don't know if she approves. All you know is that you've crossed a line, and the palace remembers everything. There is a place behind the Hall of Tranquil Virtue, tucked between the fish pond and the unused stables, where the stones are smoother than they should be, worn, burnished by knees, by elbows, by trembling palms. They call it Peach Blossom Court. But no peaches have bloomed there in decades. Only silence and punishment. You're taken there at dawn, escorted by 2 eunuchs and a third woman you don't recognize. Her expression, like wet parchment, blank, but ruined. No one tells you why you're being brought. That's the terrifying part. You weren't summoned. You were collected. Inside the walls, the air smells of crushed petals and something more metallic. You try not to breathe too deeply. There are benches, ceremonial cushions, and at the center, a stone basin filled with rainwater. Or maybe it isn't rain. Lady Ming is already there. You didn't even realize she was still alive. She's skeletal now. Her once flawless hair cropped short. She doesn't speak, just watches. Then Liu enters. She sits. No scrolls. No fan. No court formality. We'll keep this brief, she says. You cleal instinctively. She gestures at the stone basin. Truth comes in 3 forms: what is known, what is believed, and what is useful. You blink. Liu continues. What do you know? It's not a question you can answer out loud. So you stay silent. What do you believe? She asks. You consider this, that I'm not the only one holding a scroll. You reply quietly. She smiles. Just a little. And what's useful, she asks. You pause longer this time. That I keep breathing. Liu nods. That is the correct answer. She stands. You may go. You don't understand what just happened, but you walk out of Peach Blossom Court alive, which, here, qualifies as a victory. Historians still argue whether Peach Blossom Court was used for trials, punishments, or private negotiations. Some believe it was a rumor, invented by concubines to scare new arrivals. But you've touched the stone. You've seen the moss that never grows there. You know it's real. And more terrifyingly, it's empty now, waiting for someone else. After that morning, the palace shifts again. People speak softer around you. Lady Ji stops offering you candied fruit. Mei Xuan moves to another wing. Lady Hua sends you a gift, a mirror wrapped in blue silk. No note. You bury it beneath the koi pond. Just in case it watches, your embroidery changes. No more flowers. Now it's flames, ropes, unblinking eyes. You hear rumors that the emperor has not left his bed in 7 days. The heir has begun meeting with ministers. Lady Hua is seen with her son more often than not. The palace prepares for change, and, in the midst of all this, punishment becomes theater. A younger girl, barely 16, is caught sneaking mooncakes from the tribute box. Harmless, silly, except she's dragged into the great courtyard and forced to kneel through the midday sun. 3 hours. No shade. Häskin blistas. Her feet swell. She sobs so loudly that even the birds fly off. When she faints, no one moves. It's a performance. A reminder. One for everyone. You sit on a shaded bench, embroidery in hand, pretending not to notice. Later, she disappears. They say she was transferred to outer gardens. But the outer gardens have no roof, no kitchens, no rooms. You remember her name only by the last fan she carried painted with tiny rabbits. Meek, easily hunted. Lou visits again. Late one night. No pretense. She kneels in your chamber, glances at the bonsai. It's growing nicely. She murmurs, "So am I." You reply. She nods. The emperor will not live the week. You already know this. Lady Hua is readying documents to name her son crown prince. There will be resistance. You blink. You want me to be part of that? No. She says, we want you to watch it unfold. Then choose. Choose what? Whether you belong in the next dynasty. You say nothing, but that night, you begin preparing. You burn old letters. You write 3 new ones. You stitch a silk pouch with a single coin, a lock of your hair, and a pressed moth's wing. You place it under your floorboard. You speak with no one, but you make sure to be seen in the library, in the garden, in the music hall. You become visible again, but not loud. The harem holds its spring tea ceremony the following day. Traditionally, it's a calm event. Light poems, shared sweets, seasonal verses. This year, it's warfare. Lady Hua arrives late. She wears yellow, not golden imperial yellow, reserved only for empresses and emperors. The silence is immediate and sharp. Even the musicians falter. She smiles as if she's done nothing at all. The sun was strong this morning. She says, I thought this might please him. No one believes that lie, and everyone remembers it. You sip your tea. Hibiscus and chrysanthemum. You smell almonds. You freeze. No one else reacts. But you know that scent. You don't drink. You smile. You excuse yourself with a sudden cough. You dump the tea in the pond. The koi scatter. A day later, another girl collapses. Not dead, but ill enough to never speak clearly again. You never find out if it was the same tea. You never ask, because some punishments in Peach Blossom Court are delivered quietly, without stone basins or formal words. Sometimes they come in a cup, in a glance, in silence. You survive another week, another month. But you know what's coming. You've tasted it, and it tastes like almonds. It's not framed as a test. Not officially. But when Liu sends word that you're to take on a pupil, you understand exactly what this is. The same way a knife understands its sheath. The same way a peach pit understands rot. The girl is young, new, barely past the age when her hair was first coiled into the ceremonial knot. She bows too low. Her hands shake as she pours tea. She calls you master sister, which makes your bones ache with irony. Her name is Lianhua, lotus flower. Of course it is. You're instructed to teach her the arts of quiet presence, which, in palace terms, means grooming her to be harmless, invisible, pliable and beautiful, in the exact way that threatens you most. Her smile is nervous. Her robe's too clean. She still believes in fairness. That won't last. Your first lesson is simple: how to walk across polished stone without a sound. It's harder than it seems. One foot always slaps. One too always catches. But she learns. The second lesson: how to listen without reacting. You test her by dropping sharp names casually. Lady Hua, Liu, Baoqin. She flinches at two of the three. Good. She knows enough to be scared. The third lesson: how to cry without making a sound. The fourth: how to eat slowly enough to avoid suspicion, but not so slowly that it seems you're hiding something in your mouth. The fifth: how to fake sleep when a eunuch checks on you at night. She soaks it all in, like tea into silk. And you hate her for it, not personally, just generationally. Historians still debate whether senior concubines were required to mentor younger ones, or whether such pairings were informal, strategic, or even manipulative. You know it's all of the above. You're not training Lianhua to survive. You're training her to replace you. She's quick with her brushwork. Her calligraphy, clean and crisp. Her voice, soft and high. Her presence, a blend of perfume and practiced modesty. She's everything you were, and more dangerous because of it. She asks questions. Occasionally, "Do you ever miss your family?" She whispers one dusk, kneeling beside you during garden duty. You pose. No, not because you don't, but because remembering weakens the breath. Memory is a luxury. Another time: "Did you want to come here?" You almost laugh. No one wants this life. We survive it. She nods, but her eyes say she still doesn't believe you. Not yet. She writes a poem one morning, slips it into your sleeve like a girl passing notes at school. It reads, "The peach tree bends, but does not break unless someone is watching." You read it twice. You do not praise her. That would give her power. Instead, you fold it and feed it to the brazier, watching it curl into black silk ribbons. Later that week, the emperor dies. The sky doesn't darken. The birds do not cry. But the palace exhales in a way you can feel in your teeth. Gongs ring. Silk banners unfurl in black and gold. The morning begins. So does the chaos. The air is confirmed, but whispers of scandal ripple through the court like dye in water. Lady Hua's yellow robe from the tea ceremony is mentioned again. Her son's suspicious conception date resurfaces. Ministers argue behind beaded curtains. Eunuchs scurry like rats beneath a collapsing roof. And you are suddenly unmoored. Your status, never certain, is now perilously vague. You were never the emperor's favorite, but you were known, safe in the shadow of his disinterest. Now, that shadow is gone. New powers rise. Old debts are called in, and girls like Lianhua become valuable. She receives a summons 3 nights after the mourning period begins. A request to perform zither music for the new heir. You help her dress. Apply her makeup. Knot her hair just so. She looks like a painting of you years ago, when your name still turned heads and your future felt like a tightrope instead of a noose. You'll do well. You whisper, "I don't want to." She replies, "Then pretend." That's what we do. She walks away, trembling. She returns hours later, eyes wide, robe torn at the sleeve. You say nothing. She says nothing. You sit side by side in silence. And in that moment, she becomes you. The next morning, Lady Sue leaves the palace. Not dead. Not disgraced. Just retired. Peacefully. They say. No one believes it. Her bonsai is left behind. You tend it. Liu doesn't visit for weeks. Then, one day, she appears with a simple question. Is Lianhua ready? You hesitate. You've watched her bloom into a shadow. Soft. Dangerous. She's more ready than I ever was. You say. Liu smiles. Then she'll survive. You want to say, at whose expense? But you already know the answer. You are given new duties, less public. More observational. You become a presence in the archive rooms. Assisting scribes. Decoding correspondence. Categorizing birth records. You learn which ministers whisper about rebellions. Which officials are buying land outside the capital. You become a ghost with ink-stained fingers. And Lianhua rises. She begins attending ceremonies, reciting poems, receiving gifts. Her scent changes, more jasmine now, less citrus. She walks with less bounce. Her laughter has a practiced edge. One evening, she visits you. She brings tea and a question. Do you resent me? You sip. No. I resent the system that made me train you. She looks relieved. Or maybe guilty. You finish your tea. Be better than me. Or worse. Just make sure you're not forgettable. She smiles. The next day, she receives a silk robe marked with the symbol of a blooming lotus. A sign of favor. A mark of risk. You know what's coming next. And you know it has nothing to do with you, because the moment your student becomes powerful, your usefulness fades. You pack your chamber slowly. No one has asked you to, but you know the scent of change and the weight of silence as you fold your robes. You find her poem again, the one about the peach tree. You read it, then burn it again. This time, the ashes stick to your fingers. And this time, you don't wipe them away. The first time you notice the minister's shoes. It's because they are polished far too well for a man who claims to spend his afternoons tending orchards. They gleam like lies. He walks with the cautious ease of someone who knows how many eyes are watching, and exactly which ones can be bought. His name is Minister Han, and he begins appearing in the inner courtyards more frequently after the emperor's death, always lingering near the koi pond or pretending to admire the zither recitals. But he isn't here for art. He's hunting you. Of course. Pretend not to notice him. That's part of the game. You continue sorting scrolls, passing through corridors, nodding politely to eunuchs and maids alike. But the air around you changes when he appears just slightly heavier, like the moment before rain. The first time he speaks to you, he doesn't ask your name. He already knows it. Instead, he offers you a candied plum wrapped in linen. You don't take it. That night, Liu visits your chamber unannounced. She doesn't sit. He's fishing, she says bluntly, and you're the bait or the meal. You ask, which would you prefer? She doesn't answer. But you already know. If she has to ask you to be careful, it's already too late. Historians still debate the extent to which court ministers colluded with concubines. Some records imply alliances and secret romances. Others paint such interactions as exaggerated tales to spice up otherwise dull policy. But you've read enough correspondence tucked between silk-lined scrolls to know the truth often drips between the official lines. Minister Han isn't here to fall in love. He's here because influence now lives behind silk screens rather than marble pillars. And you happen to be seated at the precise intersection of memory and manipulation. His second conversation is less subtle. I understand you've been cataloging birth records, he says, feigning interest in the calligraphy you're restoring. A tedious task. Surely. But I wonder what stories those scrolls could tell, if they had voices. You smile politely, dip your brush in ink, and reply, they don't need voices, just the right readers. He nods, pleased. But you notice the twitch in his right eyebrow. He's nervous. Good. That makes two of you. That evening, Lianhua does not join the tea circle. Her absence is felt immediately, like a missing thread in an otherwise perfect embroidery. You hear whispers that she's been summoned again by the crown prince. There's no celebration, no fanfare, just quiet acknowledgement that she is now too valuable to be shared. You sit in your corner, pour your tea, and imagine the moment she learns what price power demands. Minister Han grows bolder. He begins leaving small gifts, inkstones, a folded poem, a peacock feather. Nothing scandalous, but everything suggestive. You never accept them, but you never reject them either. Each trinket goes into a wooden box beneath your floor mat. Evidence or leverage, depending on how the next few weeks unfold. One day, he asks to meet alone. No formal request, just a sideways glance during morning prayers. The meeting place is the Moon Gate, a secluded arch behind the West Pavilion. You arrive early. As always. He joins a moment later, carrying a scroll and something wrapped in silk. I believe we have similar interests. He begins. You say nothing. He opens the scroll, an official decree. Unsigned, but unmistakably real. It outlines the reorganization of the inner court. Names, titles, appointments. Yours among them. You'd be reassigned. He says, advisor to the Minister of Internal Harmony. A new position. Invented. Really? For someone with your memory? And what would I advise you ask? Who to trust? He replies, who not to. And in return, you stay alive. Maybe more than alive. You understand now? This is not a proposition. It's a rehearsal. You take the scroll, fold it. Don't promise anything. That night, Lu returns again. She stares at the bonsai for a long time before speaking. Do you trust him? No. Do you trust me? I trust your goals. That's not the same. No. But it's enough. She nods. You'll accept his offer, but not on his terms. You're not sure what that means until the next morning. When a servant delivers a gown to your chamber, it's soft lavender, embroidered with plum blossoms. At the collar, a symbol stitched in gold thread, an open fan. The mark of an imperial consultant. Not kite noble. Not kite silent. You wear it. Of course you do. Minister Han is pleased. But he misunderstands. Because you may be his ally now, but only until the chessboard changes again. In your new role, you walk freely through areas previously closed to you. Archives, prayer rooms, antechambers, outside the royal apartments. You listen more than you speak. You record everything in your mind dates. Names. Whose hand trembled while pouring tea. whose robe smelled faintly of mint when it should have been sandalwood. And at the center of it all is Lianhua. She has grown colder. Her gaze steadier, but her smile still slightly too innocent. It will cost her. One night, you find her alone, weeping by the koi pond. You sit beside her. Say nothing. He wants a child. She whispers. He says it will make me secure. You say, that depends. Do you want to be secure or free? She looks at you like you've spoken a forbidden spell. Then she sobs harder. You hand her a handkerchief. Later that week, she begins drinking chrysanthemum tea laced with silphium, a forgotten herbal remedy. Long banned, but still whispered about. You didn't give it to her, but you didn't stop her either. Because some girls survive by birthing heirs, others by making sure they never do. The moon garden is never truly empty. Even when no one walks its winding paths or sits beneath its curved trellises, the air is thick with memory. Every blossom has been watered by secrets. Every stone has heard a confession. And every curved bridge over a koi stream has held lovers too afraid to say their names aloud. You know this because you've walked here 100 times in silence, watching as shadows play out dramas far older than your own. Tonight, though, the silence feels different, charged. You arrive first. Not because you want to, but because being late in the moon garden is a kind of betrayal. The wind smells of plum blossoms and faint sandalwood smoke. You wonder who lit incense this late. Likely a maid praying her mistress doesn't fall from favor tomorrow. Then he arrives. Not Minister Han. Not a eunuch. Not a crown prince. Just someone who shouldn't be here. A scribe. A minor court historian whose name you pretended not to remember, but whose poems you once corrected behind a screen during scroll review. He stands there, in gray robes, clutching a worn paper bundle like it might catch fire. You shouldn't be here. You whisper, but you don't move. I had to see you. You've seen me every day this week. Not like this. Your pulse thuds, but your voice remains steady. You'll ruin us both. Then it's fair. He steps closer. The moonlight catches on the threadbare edge of his sleeve. He's not powerful, not noble, not useful in any palace way, but God's is honest. That might be the most dangerous thing of all. Historians still argue whether concubines ever truly loved. Some claim their affections were merely strategies, tools sharpened by isolation and necessity. Others speak of hidden letters, coded poems, and midnight rendezvous beneath hollowed trees. You never planned to be part of that argument? And yet, here you are. You don't kiss. Not yet. You just stand there, inches apart. The way you might stand beside an open flame, entranced, uncertain, already burning. You're being watched. You murmur. I know. He says. I want them to see. Foolish. Brave. Doomed. The next morning, a red thread is tied to your chamber's door handle. A warning. Red. In this context, does not mean luck. It means blood, gossip, and retribution. Lu arrives that evening. She doesn't scold you. She sits, takes tea. You remember Lady Anne, she asks, stirring her cup without drinking, the one who vanished during the Lantern Festival. Liunots. She fell in love, made the mistake of believing it was enough, and she drowned, or was made to drown, depending on who you ask. You don't ask. The next time you meet in the moon garden, You're not foolish enough to let your hands touch. But your eyes do. And that's already too much. He tells you of what he's learned of new policies being drafted to reassign senior concubines to distant villas, under the guise of spiritual retreat, of ministers vying for control, not of the crown prince, but of his future wives, of a plan to consolidate the harem, reducing the court's inner ranks by nearly half. They want efficiency, he mutters. They want obedience. They want silence. You say. He presses a folded paper into your palm. It's a list. Names. Some you recognize. Some are girls who braid your hair. Some are ones who never speak at all. You memorize it. Burn it. That night, you pack a hidden pouch with silks, powdered charcoal, a broken mirror shard, and 2 coins, not because you plan to flee, but because you may soon need to trade pieces of yourself just to remain whole. The next encounter happens indoors. A hallway. You're walking past the Southern Archive when he brushes too close. A whisper Lady Hua suspects. Of course she does. She always has. She sees everything, except her own son's failings. You send word to Lu the next day, I need permission. Her reply, no one is giving you any. That's the point. It's not the love that's dangerous. It's the belief that you can have it without consequence. So you change your strategy. You make yourself visible, but with others. You laugh too loudly at Minister Han's jokes. You compliment Lady Zhen's inkwork in front of 3 maids. You let the Crown Prince see you walking through the garden alone at dusk, face tilted toward the breeze, like a girl without secrets. Lian Hua notices. You're performing. She whispers one evening, I'm surviving. Is there a difference? Only if you forget which part is the mask. She watches you with something like sorrow, or maybe envy. That night, you do kiss the scribe. Not in the garden. Not in a hidden alcove. In your chamber, and then you send him away. You don't do it for your safety. You do it for his, because you've begun to understand that surviving the palace is not about outlasting your enemies, it's about refusing to become them. Days pass. You hear rumors that Lady Hua's influence is slipping, that a new favorite is rising, that the Crown Prince has grown distant, cold. You begin to fade into the background again. Just slightly, purposefully, and then, one morning, the red thread is gone from your door, replaced with a white one, a gift, a warning. A decision. Lu visits you that evening. Her eyes betray nothing. Well, she says, you've made it through. For now. She sips her tea. You love him. You don't answer. You'll have to choose. You already have, but choosing doesn't always mean acting. Sometimes, it means waiting, holding on to that memory in the garden like a talisman, not as hope, but as proof that once, even in a place built on silence, something real was whispered aloud, and for a moment, it mattered. The night you're bedding nearly becomes your noose begins with something deceptively lovely. An invitation, delicately inked and scented with orange blossom water, arrives in a silk pouch tied with gold string. You open it slowly, knowing full well that no real choice follows such formality. The seal bears the stylized emblem of the Empress Dowager, the woman who controls more from behind her silken curtain than many emperors ever did from their thrones. The summons is for a private audience, which in court speak can mean anything from polite inquiry to execution dressed in poetry. You bathe. You braid your hair. You drape yourself in the robe. Liu sends deep green with silver embroidery, and not a single embellishment more than necessary. When you arrive, your feet barely echo against the marble floor. Even your shadow feels muted. The Empress Dowager waits in her receiving chamber, flanked by 2 senior attendants with faces like carved lacquer. She doesn't look at you right away. She pours tea into 2 bowls. The gesture is ominous, only because it implies civility. You sit, my grandson. She begins, voice like smoke curling from a censer. Speaks highly of your restraint. You bow. Restraint is not the same as loyalty. You bow lower, un moment passe, then another. You are clever. She finally says, that makes you useful. But clever girls often forget when they are being tested. You murmur agreement. What else can you do? The tea is bitter and cool. She tells you a story about a concubine who once tried to climb too high, who left behind a trail of scent and secrets. The story ends with silk twisted around her neck. Found at dawn among the peonies. You nod, as if it's a parable you've never heard. But everyone has heard it. Historians still argue whether the Empress Dowager's power was ceremonial or real. Some say she ruled only in name. Others insist her hand-shaped court policy more than any male advisors. You've never cared for that debate. You've seen how servants flinch when she frowns. That's all the evidence you need. When you leave, you're escorted not to your chamber, but to the southern sleeping wing, usually reserved for girls awaiting reassignment. The room is immaculate. The sheets, crisp. But something's off. The incense burns too quickly. The maid who bows too deeply won't meet your eye. The mattress is firmer than usual, like it's been prepared to prevent movement. You undress slowly. Your heart pounds like it's rehearsing its last performance. You lie down. You don't sleep. Hours pass. Or minutes. Then it happens. The rustle of silk. The weight near your feet. The sound of a rope being drawn so soft it could be mistaken for wind through reeds. But you're faster. You kick. The figure stumbles. You roll, grabbing the edge of the bedsheet. It's not a dream. The garrote was real. So is the bruising on your collarbone. You scream, too loud for silence to swallow. Lights flood the hallway. Eunuchs rush in. The figure vanishes. A dropped ribbon, embroidered with cherry blossoms, is all that remains. You sit there, wrapped in your sheets, shivering not from cold, but because you've seen what almost became your death shroud. They do not offer you answers. Only new bedding and a different chamber. Liu arrives the next morning with a single question. Do you know who sent them? You say, everyone. And somehow, that's not an exaggeration. Everyone had reason. Minister Han, for knowing too much. Lady Hua, for not knowing enough. The Empress Dowager, for needing no reason at all. Lian Yue, perhaps, though you hate yourself for thinking it. Liu examines the bruising. You'll wear high collars for a while. You nod. Later that week, the palace whispers shift from scandal to celebration. A festival is approaching, something about flowers. Renewal. Gratitude. The irony is exquisite. You decorate your bruised throat with a mandarin collar stitched in gold. Smiling like a girl who doesn't sleep with her door barricaded. You spot the Empress Dowager during the opening procession. She raises her teacup toward you, ever so slightly. It's not a threat. It's recognition. You've passed her test. For now, your scribe, Your forbidden one leaves you a message beneath your bonsai tray. Just 4 characters, even silk phrase. You don't respond. He'll understand. That evening, you rearrange your room. Move the writing table closer to the window. Shift the sleeping mat toward the door. Not because it'll stop them, but because it shows you still have control over something. At dinner, Lianhua sits beside you. I heard. She whispers. You nod. I wouldn't. She adds. You believe her, or you choose to. That night, you sleep with your back against the wall and one slipper on your hand like a weapon. And you dream not of the rope, but of the Empress Dowager's smile. It frightens you more, because you now understand what she wanted all along. Not your death. Your fear. It's more useful, longer lasting, easier to shape. And now, you are shaped, but you are also still alive. Which, in this place, is no small miracle. The Festival of Flowers begins with a trumpet blast that barely stirs the plum blossoms. You rise before dawn. Your chamber already scented with jasmine oil and pine ash. A maid you've never seen before is brushing your hair too roughly, but you don't flinch. Today is about pageantry, masks, and the dangerous illusion of choice. It's the first time in 6 months you've been asked to present yourself publicly in the imperial procession, which means only one thing: you've been chosen. Again, to be seen. You wear a robe of pale lilac, its sleeves embroidered with petals so delicate they seem to tremble when you breathe. A veil of fine gauze drapes over your hair, secured with a silver peony pin, one that belonged to someone else before she retired to a silent monastery. The officials never said why. The palace just grew quieter. As you're escorted toward the parade ground, you spot her, Lianhua, dressed in deep coral, the imperial shade. She smiles too wide, her lips lacquered to perfection. That smile is not for you. It's for the crowd, for the advisors, for the watching wives, whose jewelry clinks softly behind gilded screens. The parade snakes through the palace grounds like a river of silk and powdered faces. Concubine, wife, and attendant is ranked by robe color and placement. You've been placed 3 spots behind Lianhua, but 4 ahead of Minister Han's niece, another silent signal in this unending game of scented warfare. You feel eyes on you from every direction. The crown prince doesn't look at you, but he doesn't need to. His glance was already calculated weeks ago. The route decided. The favor rationed like wine at winter court. You keep your back straight, your hands folded just so, your pace exact. To fall out of rhythm is to become visible in the wrong way. At one bend in the path, you pass the court of red petals, a place built for joy, now mostly used for silence. You glimpse something unusual, a servant holding a dove, trembling slightly. Odd, but nothing here is ever truly just what it seems. A whisper runs ahead of the procession. Someone has collapsed. You pause as the line slows. Lianhua is no longer 3 steps ahead. She is on the ground, clutching her stomach, her robe darkened by something you hope is just spilled perfume. But it isn't. The whisper sharpens. Blood. You inhale, exhale, and take 1 step forward. Not 2, not 4. 1. Enough to signify distance. Enough to let the watchers know you are not with her. The concubines behind you adjust their expressions like actors mid-scene. One pretends to drop a fan. Another coughs delicately. No one touches her. No one dares. Eventually, the eunuchs lift Lianhua from the path. She doesn't scream, That's what chills you most. Back in your chamber, you remove your robe in silence. The peony pin is missing. You'll claim it fell. You'll never admit you placed it on the path where the crown prince was sure to pass. He'll see it. He'll remember. He might wonder who dropped it. But he'll never ask. Historians still debate the true purpose of the Festival of Flowers. Some say it was meant to honor fertility. Others argue it was simply a tool for the court to reassert dominance over the harem. Using beauty as both a blade and bait. You've now walked it yourself. And you know the truth. It's a contest dressed as a celebration, where losing looks like fainting, and winning might feel exactly the same. That night, you visit Lou. She's resting. She says she'll survive. For now, she was pregnant. Lou notes. Yes. You don't ask who the father was. It doesn't matter. In this place, even children are pawns before they breathe their first air. What happens now, you ask? She'll be moved. Banished. Promoted sideways. You know what that means, assigned to a temple or a far estate. Wrapped in silk and silence. She'll never return. You murmur. Liu shrugs. Better than some fates. You leave quietly. Your slippers soft against the lacquered floor. In your room, you find a single peony petal resting on your pillow. It's not a message. It's a warning. The next morning, the palace is humming with new rumors. Minister Han is said to be favoring a younger cousin. Lady Hua has taken to daily prayer, an ominous change for someone who's always scorned ritual. You, meanwhile, are promoted to floral coordinator of the Western Terrace. A title as meaningless as it is strategic, because now you control the seating arrangements for the next tea ceremonies. And in the palace, where you sit is just as important as who sits beside you. You begin reshuffling proximity like a game of scented chess. You place quiet girls near loud ones. Whisperers beside sleepers. Rivals within reach of silk knives they haven't yet unsheathed. It isn't cruelty. It's survival. Because if you don't shape the table, someone will do it for you. And you've already nearly been strangled in your sleep once this season. By week's end, Lianhua is gone. No ceremony. No farewell. Just an empty chamber and a locked wardrobe. You sit, alone, on the Western Terrace, watching petals fall into the koi pond, not from the trees. From your sleeve, you pluck them one by one, letting the fish decide who sinks and who floats. And for the first time in weeks, you feel something close to calm, not peace, just control. And, in this place, that might be the rarest flower of all. The first sign that you're being promoted again isn't a formal decree or whispered approval from the Empress Dowager. It's the absence of noise outside your chamber. No footsteps. No giggling maids. Not even the scrape of a servant sweeping the walkways. Silence like this is never a gift. It's a staging ground. Then, a quiet knock, not the brisk knock of a eunuch, not the tentative tap of a servant. A calculated rhythm, too. Then pause. Then two more. You open the door to find Liu standing there in a robe that's too plain for someone of her seniority. She steps inside, closes the door, and hands you a bundle, wrapped in violet silk. You're being moved. You blink. Banished. Elevated. You wait. Imperial Library Wing. She says, almost too casually. Private archivist. Only 5 positions. You'll be replacing one who developed an allergy to truth. Translation. She asked the wrong question at the wrong time. You unwrap the bundle. It's a new robe, dove gray with silver threads, woven into the collar in the shape of cranes. A scholar's pattern. A veil of a different kind. You're being removed from the harem floor. But not released. You're being shelved, like a particularly valuable volume. The library is nothing like the perfumed corridors you're used to. It's stone and paper and time. Rows of scrolls tower around you like silent judges. The air smells of ink, dust, and melted candle wax. Here, no one speaks unless absolutely necessary. The scribes move like ghosts. You blend in. And that, perhaps, is the point. Your chamber is attached to the Western Records Room. No guards. No maids. Just a lock. A writing desk. And a window facing the inner garden walls. You sleep better for 3 nights than you have in 3 years. But peace never lingers. One morning, you find an unsigned note tucked between the bindings of an old decree. Look for the scroll with the blue ribbon. Burn it. Then disappear. Of course you don't burn it. You wait until midnight. Light 1 candle. And begin reading. The scroll is a list of names. Girls from the harem. Most of them already gone. Some reassigned. Some vanished. Next to each name is a symbol, a tiny character, indicating a particular trait. Fertile, compliant, ambitious, dangerous. Your name is near the bottom. Your symbol is a lotus petal wrapped in a thorn. The next morning, the scroll is gone. You didn't burn it. Someone took it. That evening, a scribe you don't recognize delivers a small package to your chamber. Inside is a piece of black lacquer carved into the shape of a fan, with one edge chipped. You stare at it for a long time, remembering Liu's old warning. When the fan closes, so do your options. You've been elevated not to protect you, but to separate you from the others, from influence, from information. You're a threat with too many memories and not enough fear. Historians still debate the function of the Imperial Library beyond record-keeping. Some suggest it was a quiet exile for troublesome minds. Others argue it became a hidden engine of court politics, with knowledge wielded like a curved blade. Now, as you move among the scrolls and calculate your survival by candlelight, you lean toward the latter. On the 5th night, you hear someone knock again. This time, not Liu. It's him, the scribe, the one who left you notes in bonsai trays. His robe is darker now, his eyes more exhausted. He speaks quickly. They know. Who? All of them. You close the door behind him. Then why come here? Because I have to give you something. He hands you a different scroll. Thin. No ribbon. You read it and freeze. A confession. Not his. Someone else's. A forged pregnancy claim linked to a now-dead concubine, falsified by Minister Han. It was buried. He whispers, but not erased. Why bring this to me? Because they're using it to reshuffle the court. They'll accuse the dowager next. Blame her for orchestrating it. Collapse her influence. Replace her with someone younger, more malleable. And they want you on the council that confirms the shift. You sit down. Scroll, trembling in your hand. I'm a concubine. No, you were a concubine. Now, your memory, and memory terrifies them. You don't sleep that night. The next morning, you receive a formal summons. Not from the Empress Dowager. Not from Minister Han. From the Crown Prince himself. He receives you in the garden chamber. Alone. No advisors. No guards. Just the soft murmur of a water basin nearby and a jasmine breeze pretending it knows nothing of betrayal. You've been observant, he says. You wait. Tell me. He continues. What would you change? If given the power, you think of Lianhua, of the girl who braided your hair before being reassigned, of the red thread, the bruises, the missing pin, rotation. You reply, rotation, 3 years. No longer. After that, reassignment by choice. No exile. No execution by neglect. He considers that would reduce loyalty. No, it would clarify it. He doesn't nod. But he also doesn't dismiss you. You'll be consulted again. He says, until then, stay quiet. You return to your chamber and find the lacquer fan waiting. Whole now, and you realize the fan never closed. It simply changed hands. You wake the next morning to the sound of paper being slipped beneath your door. A rustle so soft, it almost disappears into the hush of the library. You open it to find another scroll short. Precise. Anonymous. Just 5 characters, the Crown Prince listens now. The phrase is both terrifying and exhilarating. It confirms what the previous night hinted at you are no longer invisible. And that's dangerous. For weeks you play the part of the quiet archivist. You oversee ink inventories, update ceremonial logs, and organize festival scrolls in perfect chronological order. But beneath the stillness, you're listening, watching, recording the names of those who suddenly stop appearing at court, and those who suddenly appear too much. There's a shift in the palace air. The Crown Prince becomes more present. He begins hosting poetry readings again, inviting mid-ranking officials to his chambers for private consultations. The Empress Dowager, meanwhile, retreats farther into seclusion. Her meals are delivered behind screens. Her eyes, when she's glimpsed at all, are lined not just with age, but with suspicion. Your daily task grows stranger. You're assigned to review past records of concubine selections, not from recent years, but from 3 generations ago. You begin to understand what's happening. They're rewriting the harem, not erasing it, reshaping it, selectively highlighting patterns that support a new philosophy of succession, a quieter, more orderly lineage, one where emotional entanglements never happened. Betrayals were procedural errors, and inconvenient deaths were the result of fragile health, and you, somehow, are being asked to hold the pen. Historians still argue whether these harem records were ever factual. Some insist they're curated fiction from start to finish. Others believe every date and death was exactly as recorded. Now that you're holding the real scrolls, the versions before official polishing, you know the answer lies in between. There is truth here, but only the kind wrapped in silk and seasoned with fear. One afternoon, a eunuch named Bai approaches you. You've seen him before. He once served in the Empress Dowager's personal court. Now he bears the Crown Prince's seal. He bows. You've been invited. Where? The Imperial Tea Room. Private. Another test. You arrive at dusk. The sky bleeds orange through the latticework as the Crown Prince sits waiting. Alone. A pot of oolong steeping beside him. He Histuris. And you sit across from him on the woven mat. I want to ask you something without court language. He says. You nod. Do you think I should trust them? the ministers, the records. You think carefully before replying. Records lie when they're afraid. So the question isn't whether they lie, it's who they're scared of. He actually smiles at that. A real one. Faint. Short-lived. Do you fear me? He asks. I fear what you represent. He pours your tea himself. I need to know who else has seen what you've seen. He says, I burned some, memorized others. I've spoken to no one. A long pause. Then you're going to rewrite the lineage history. You blink. You'll preserve what must remain. But you will also record the version I want remembered. You say nothing. He leans in. Every dynasty is built on ink, not swords. It's the most honest thing you've ever heard him say. And so begins the strangest season of your life. You become the court's hidden historian. You still wear the gray robe of a forgotten concubine. But you now carry the keys to a narrative that will outlive emperors. You are summoned at odd hours to clarify phrasing, adjust euphemisms, insert losses and victories into the folds of time, like stitching into an embroidered robe, all while continuing to file away death scrolls that arrive folded 3 times, never 4, never 5. The scribe returns one evening. He says nothing, just leaves a flower on your windowsill. A camellia. You pluck its petals apart slowly, watching each one fall into the koi pond. You do not cry. You do not smile. You do not forget. By winter, the crown prince's favor becomes public. He begins citing her historical analysis during court meetings. No one names you aloud, but they know. You become a ghost in silk. Haunting policy. From behind bamboo screens, Lou returns quietly to your chamber one night. She carries no gifts, no warnings, just sits beside your candle and says, you have to choose soon between silence and legacy. They're not opposites. Not in the palace. She leaves behind a comb made of bone. The teeth are carved with characters. You recognize them, the names of the concubines who disappeared. Your name is the final one. Unfinished. Waiting. You file it away under personal artifacts, as if that will keep it safe. Then comes the final request. Not from the crown prince, from the Empress Dowager herself. Another summons. Her chamber. Alone. You go. She is smaller now, like a statue worn by seasons. Her once cutting voice has softened, but her eyes remain sharp. You've changed him, she says. No, Majesté. He changed himself. Don't flatter him. He still bleeds like a boy. You sip the tea she offers, wondering if it's laced with anything interesting. She sets down a scroll. This is the true history. The one I wrote. You may read it. You may not. But you must decide which version will outlast us both. You don't open it. Not yet, because she's not really asking for your loyalty. She's offering you power. A quiet, terrifying kind. The kind that never gets statues. Only footnotes. You bow. I'll write what must be remembered. She nods. Then she hands you the seal. Not hers. Not the prince's. The historian's. You walk back through the garden, with the weight of 1,000 silences in your sleeves. That night, you begin to write. Not for them, for the ones who never made it this far. You don't sleep for 3 nights after receiving the historian's seal. You lie beneath the embroidered canopy, staring up at cranes stitched into the silk, thinking about all the versions of truth you've been told to choose between. You think of Lianhua, of the red thread, of the scribe who smelled faintly of cedar and never once asked for anything. You think of your mother, though her face has faded to a blur, and how she once said that ink was heavier than water. And then, you begin. You write on parchment, so fine it crackles under your wrist. You use a special ink charcoal black, made from lacquered soot and ox bile. It's meant to last 3 lifetimes. Every symbol must be deliberate. Every omission, a quiet rebellion. You start not with your name, but with theirs, the forgotten girls. You write their fates beside their names. Not just disappeared, but sent to the border temple after refusing the crown prince's advances. Not just died of fever, but bled out after being forced to consume moon tea 10 days too late. You include what no one else will. You include the thread, one by one. The records shift. Meanwhile, in the court above, the power games escalate. The crown prince grows bolder, issuing new decrees in his own name. A reshuffled court appointment, dismisses 3 advisors, and demotes a favored eunuch for misallocation of ceremonial fabrics, which, you suspect, is code for getting caught between 2 factions. The Empress Dowager hosts one last gathering a tea banquet with no actual tea, just poisoned silences. Elegantly served. You are not invited, but your name is mentioned. Twice, Lou tells you that after the banquet, one of the court wives fainted in the garden. No one helped her up. That's how you know the shift is almost complete. Historians still argue whether the court records from this era reflect genuine reform or just a rebranding of palace politics. You now realize it doesn't matter. The outcome will always be dressed in silk. What matters is who chooses the fabric. You start adding footnotes, hidden ones, using an old system of marginalia developed by temple scribes, barely noticeable, but legible if you know what to look for. It's your own secret layer of history. A second record beneath the record. One evening, a package arrives. Nunachi, just a carved turtle figurine ivory. Eyes inlaid with jet. You recognize the symbol. A quiet gift from the Empress Dowager. Her way of saying, well done. You hide it inside a false bookbinding and never touch it again. The Crown Prince visits you 2 days later. His face is thinner now. There's a darkness around his eyes that suggests too much strategy. Not enough sleep. You've finished it, he asks. I'm finishing. He sits without being invited. I need you to include a correction. He says. To what? My mother's legacy. You pose. He clarifies. She was never supposed to be empress. It was a mistake. A survival. You understand? I understand. He looks at your hands. Your ink-stained fingers. You've written more history than most men read. You raise an eyebrow. That's not hard. He almost laughs. Almost. Then, with a flick of his sleeve, he places a sealed envelope on your desk. In case I don't return. Return from what? But he's already gone. You break the seal that night. Inside is a draft proclamation, his abdication, or perhaps his elevation. It's written ambiguously, like all good palace documents. It names no successor. It praises no one in particular. It simply outlines the need for a new chapter and a revised lineage of imperial stewardship. You add it to your collection of dangerous truths. The next morning, the Empress Dowager dies. Peacefully. They say. In sleep. No autopsy. No mourning period. Just a rapid redistribution of her attendants and a sudden order to dismantle her garden chamber. You are summoned to record her final will. Though it was likely composed years ago, it reads, "Let the records reflect silence. Let silence reflect power." You smile, and then you write it down. Later, Lou appears in your doorway. No veil, no formalities. She's gone. She says simply, you nod. I know. She left you a gift. I already received the turtle. No, not that. She hands you a scroll. You open it carefully. It's a list of girls selected for reassignment. At the bottom, effective immediately. Your name is there, reassigned. Not exiled. Not promoted. Simply moved. To where you ask, "Liv-tilsaghed," to peace. You laugh. Softly. That's not a place. No. But maybe it's a beginning. You pack nothing but your pen. That night, you walk the corridors one last time. Past the bonsai trays. Past the koi pond, where petals once floated. Past the door, where Lianhua used to whisper poems through the screen. And you arrive at the eastern gate. No guards stop you. You step outside. The air is cooler than you remember. The stars, a little too bright. The world, wider. You look back once. Just once. Then you walk. You don't know where the path leads, but for the first time, you are not being watched. And the record, for once, is yours. The road out of the palace is lined with lanterns that no one bothered to light. They sway gently in the wind, like the ghosts of festivals that never happened. You walk slowly, not out of fear, but to savor this rarest of sensations movement without permission. Your shoes, soft-soled and worn, press quietly into the earth. No embroidered carpets, no clicking beads, no whispers behind fans. Just you and the sound of a world that doesn't know your name. Ahead, a carriage waits. Plain, wooden, no crest or banner. The driver doesn't speak. He bows once, opens the door, and returns to his seat. You climb in without asking where you're going, because it no longer matters. Inside, there's a cushion, a flask of warm tea, and a small package. You unwrap it cautiously, just a book. Blank, untouched, a brush tucked neatly inside, and a slip of paper that simply reads, "Write what they couldn't." The carriage begins to roll. Outside, the palace walls recede, the horizon expanding with every jolt of the wheel. You pass villages where no one knows of the red thread, the peony pins, the falsified scrolls. Farmers tend to their fields. Children chase geese. A woman sells dumplings on the roadside, her voice rising in a cheerful melody. None of them stop to stare. You're no longer remarkable. And that's the most remarkable thing of all. At a way station, you rest. A simple room, wood-framed and quiet, with a paper screen window that lets in the scent of pine. You sit at the low table and open the blank book. The brush waits beside you like an old friend who never asked questions. You dip it into ink and let your hand hover above the page. Then you begin, not with emperors or betrayals, with names. With all the women no one remembered, who made the court turn with their silence, their cunning, their endurance. You write, "She braided my hair before she disappeared." You write, "She swallowed moon tea and smiled anyway." You write, "She hid messages in bonsai soil and never once asked for thanks." And you write your own name last, not because it's most important, but because it's the one no one expected to still be writing. Historians will never read this version. They'll cite official scrolls. They'll debate timelines and dynasties, and who wore what robe on what moonlit festival. But maybe, one day, a girl will find this book in the back corner of a dusty temple archive. Maybe she'll run her fingers along the brushstrokes and know that someone saw them. All of them. That someone remembered, and maybe she'll write too. Outside, spring begins to show itself. Buds on the trees. Cracks in the frost. Somewhere far away, a new empress is being selected. Somewhere closer, a fish leaps in a pond you'll never see again, and you once a name on a silk scroll. Once, a number in a perfumed hierarchy now sit quietly, writing the truth no one dared to preserve. You are no longer afraid of red thread. You are no longer bound by silk. You are still here, and the story is yours. So now, you let the ink dry. Let the scrolls fade into the candle-lit hush of memory. Let your shoulders fall, unburdened by rank, expectation, or silence. The palace has vanished behind you like a dream, one stitched with gold and shadow, echoing with footsteps that are no longer yours to follow. The world out here is slower, softer. The wind doesn't carry rumors. The pine trees don't whisper secrets. There's no fan to drop, no gaze to calculate, no comb carved with names that vanish in the night. Just your breath. Steady now. Just the creak of old wood beneath your weight and the soft thrum of a world turning without needing you to bow. In the stillness, you realize you are not alone. Not truly. The stories you carry are companions now, folded gently into your thoughts. Each name, a pulse. Each silence, a thread that leads you forward, not back. You lie down beneath a blanket of woven cotton, not brocade, and close your eyes without fear of summons or ceremony. The stars blink above you through the paper screen, and the earth holds you as no palace ever did. You are safe. You are remembered. You are free. Now rest. Traveler, you've walked a long, long way. Sweet dreams.